Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be doing a guide for Oda for EU4 1.35 Domination. So Oda is a nation located in the region of Japan, and even though we're starting off with them for this guide can also be used for pretty much any other nation in the region of Japan except for Ashikaga, so Ryukyu and Ainu, because different guides are needed for them. But by loosely following along with this guide, you can pretty much use it for any other daimyo over here. Oda starts off as one of the most powerful militarily focused nations in Japan, with ideas such as plus 10% morale of armies and plus 10% infantry combat ability as starters. Then we finish off with plus 1 land leader fire, and in the meantime we have plus 10% goods produced and minus 10% court creation cost, along with minus 10% province war score cost, which makes these insanely powerful. Then we have plus 1 land leader shock, plus 1 land leader siege, plus 10% land fire damage, minus 5% tech cost, and plus 20% national manpower. So these national ideas are simply loaded with militarily focused things. Oda's missions are the unique daimyo missions, which pretty much every other nation over here in the region of Japan has, but you will be getting a completely different mission tree if and when you decide to form Japan later on. By starting at Oda, you will be conquering your neighbors and expanding over in the region of Japan in no time before gobbling all of these guys up and finally fighting Ashikaga and uniting the region of Japan. So sit back, relax, and learn what you need to do as Oda. Alright, here we are as Oda, and we do start off with a couple of other unique, not specifically for Oda, but unique things. We start off as a daimyo, which gives us another plus 10% morale of armies and plus 10% infantry combat ability, along with plus 4 samurai force limit, which is the unique regiment that the daimyos and the Japanese nations get since Domination, which means we start off with plus 20% infantry combat ability and amazing morale as well. And the way you're going to expand with Oda, like I said, can be done with pretty much every other nation over here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go into your states and summon the Diet. You can choose whichever agenda is best for you. Then we're going to give the clergy religious state, clerical advisory council, religious diplomats, and clerical education. Then we're going to give the nobility primacy of the nobility, increased levies, aristocratic counselors, and we're going to give the merchant guilds land of commerce, patronage of the arts, commercial advisory board, and indebted to the merchant guilds. Then we're gonna seize land. Next, something that I do need to mention is there are a couple of playstyles right here that you can do after you form Japan, and you will need to sort of make a decision on those right at the start of the game, because you will be getting Shinto related isolationism events, and you want to choose those based on what you plan to do over here in Japan. So for me, there are 3 different playstyles that you can do as Japan later on when you form it. Basically, you have the isolationist playstyle, where you can conquer maybe the entirety of Japan and maybe all of Korea, something like the Nippon trade node, and then play tall sorta in that region over there. Then you have the colonial playstyle, which once again you conquer maybe all of Japan or maybe all of Japan and Korea and Manchuria or something like that, and then you don't care about these guys over here, you just go on and colonize. And then you have the expansionist playstyle, where you go ahead and blob out over here in this region, and of course any of those playstyles can be combined. Maybe you expand and colonize, maybe you just stay like this and colonize, maybe you just stay like this, don't expand, don't colonize, but it's pretty much up to you. If you plan on expanding a whole lot pretty much outside of these 2 regions, you will want to go towards the more open, tier right here. As we can see, these are the benefits that you get. Whereas if you're playing a tall, isolationist Japan campaign, you will want to go with the isolationist picks once you get those events. But of course, more on that later. Next, we do need to rearrange and buff up our army a little bit, because of course in Japan we will be starting off with wars immediately, and we'll be warring all the time until we conquer pretty much everything around us. So as Oda, we do start off with 4 land force limit, and we do start off with this 3 guys right here. So what you're going to want to do right now is go ahead and hire a samurai infantry, just 1 for now, that should be enough. Later we'll be buffing it up, of course, significantly. And then what you want to do is go ahead and hire the free company as well in your same province right here. And as Oda, we do start off allied with Shiba. You can keep being allied to Shiba for now, but of course later on we are going to start expanding. And the 3 nations that we can fight right off the bat are Tokugawa, which is allied to Hosokawa, so that can be annoying. And then we have Toki and Kitabatake right here next to us, which are more easy picks. Then of course you're going to want to go ahead and set some rivals, pretty much rival the nations that you're going to fight immediately, such as Toki for example, Kitabatake, and then you can do whoever else you want. In my game right here, I'm just going to rival Tokugawa. And there we go. With our 2 free diplomats, with 1 of them, we're immediately gonna royal marry Ashikaga, and this guy over here is gonna keep improving relations with Ashikaga for the entirety of the campaign. And then with this other free diplomat right here, I do recommend getting 1 or 2 more allies, preferably 1 down in the south that we're gonna fight way later down the line, and 1 far up in the north that we're also gonna fight way later down the line. So I'm just gonna ally Ando right here and some other nation down here. It really doesn't matter who your allies are too much. Then you can merge your boats right here. We're gonna try and keep them docked for now, and we're not gonna be using them immediately. Another thing you can do is tell your merchant in Nippon to go ahead and establish communities for plus 15% improved relations. This other guy right here, you can send him to collect from Beijing, even though he won't really be doing anything over there. And finally, we do need to hire a military advisor. I recommend going for a morale, discipline, manpower, or fort defense level 1 mil advisor. I do have a national manpower guy, so I am gonna hire him. No need to hire an admin or diplo advisor for now. Now we just need to wait for December 11th. Now a couple of months have passed. As you can see, I'm improving with Ashikaga, and these are the nations that I've allied: Yamana and Ando up here, and of course we did start off allied with Shiba. Like I said, get 2 more allies that you're probably not gonna fight immediately. Now all we need to do is wait for the free company to get their morale up, and we'll be declaring on one of our 3 neighbors, whichever one is the easiest to fight. And once you've gotten a little bit of morale in your free company, you can go ahead and attach it to your main army, and you can go ahead and hire a general, just like that, and go ahead and declare your first war. Let's see, Tokugawa right here, Hosokawa won't join, but Uesugi will. Tokyo right here, they have a level 3 fort, so they'll be annoying, so most likely you're gonna fight Kitabadake first. It really doesn't matter who they're allied to. They're allied to Imagawa in my game, which is this nation right here. You pretty much want to white piece everyone else so you can fight them as soon as possible. And there we go. That's your first war started. Your superior army numbers and army quality should make easy work of whichever nation you're fighting. And there we go. I pieced out Imagawa for some money. I've sieged down Kitabatake, and of course whoever you're fighting, as long as they're, you know, decently sized, you're gonna go ahead and full annex them and take all of their money. Pretty much the biggest risk right here in the early game, until you get maybe about half of Japan, state everything, and then lower autonomy, is the money. As we can see, we are losing quite a bit of cash at this moment, but once you conquer a couple of territories and lower autonomy, that should straighten itself out. So be careful with bankruptcies. Once you're done with your first war, you can go ahead and chill a little bit if you want to, maybe waiting to core stuff up and stuff like that. If not, you can simply go ahead and declare your next wars. And of course, you're always going to be getting new neighbors. Let's see right here, Hatakayama, they're losing to 3 guys right now, so it's not that smart to declare on them. They're occupied as well. Tsutsui right here, they have an ally, but Tokyo over here, they don't have an ally right now. And even though they have a level 3 fort, this is a good time to declare on them. In this war, I am going to call in Ando with the promise of land, but I'm actually not going to give them anything since they can't take anything either way. So there's the declaration on Tokyo right here with a level 3 fort. Of course, if you're sieging down a level 3 fort, you can get a couple of more loans like I just did and go ahead and hire a couple of more troops. They can be samurai or regular regiments, it doesn't matter too much at this point in the game. There we go, now I've defeated Toki. Once again, we're full annexing whichever nation we're fighting. And right now, as we can see, it says right here that I've reached the max amount of loans and then I'm gonna go bankrupt, but actually that's not true since we have a little bit of cash left over from the war, and you can go ahead and pay off your old small loans, and by paying off your old small loans, you can get new larger loans, for example like this, from the merchant guilds. There we go, there's indebted to the merchant guilds, and now with these loans that are even larger, you can go ahead and pay off the loans, of course, from earlier that are smaller. With this other free diplomat, you can, if you want to, improve relations with outraged countries. Even if you get coalitioned over here in Japan, due to the truces and alliances and stuff like that that goes on over in this region, even if 5 nations coalition you, most likely only one of them is going to end up declaring on you and actually fighting you. So coalitions aren't a worry even if they form. Right now, I've deleted the free company since you only need it in your initial 1 to 3 wars. Of course, you don't have to be declaring wars left and right like I'm doing right now. If you're less experienced in Japan, you might want to chill a little bit in between wars to get the hang of this, but keep in mind that if you're not that fast, other nations around you will grow larger faster than you, so you do need to keep up a sort of a pace. And this is one of the incidents that I was talking about earlier related to the Shinto religion. Basically, this is the active incident right now, Neo-Confucianism, and depending on what your playstyle is later on, of course, you will want to go either with the open outcome of the incident or the isolationist outcome of the incident. Now, for the purposes of this guide, let's say that in my game right here, the only thing I'm planning for is to conquer the region of Japan and the region of Korea, and then maybe Manchuria as well, and then sort of play tall in this region right here without sort of focusing on too many other things outside of that. So obviously that is sort of an isolationist playstyle, even though maybe the open outcome sometimes gives you better modifiers. But since I'm going sort of isolationist in my game, that's why I'm gonna go with the isolationist option. This right here gives me +1 year legitimacy. Choose whichever one you want based on what you're doing in your game. Now that I've chilled a bit and cored everything up from my previous 2 wars, I'm gonna be declaring my next war versus Tsutsui right here, who is allied to Ishiki, and I'm gonna call in Yamana to help me out because why not? Once again, you're fighting the weakest out of any of your neighbors, or the ones that are easiest to fight, that have the least allies, the least troops. You get the point. Don't go ahead and declare on someone that's maybe potentially as strong or stronger than you, like in my game Hosokawa and Uesugi right now. So just go ahead and clean up the smaller guys. But for example, if you start off in the north over here, maybe with someone like Uesugi, you'd go ahead and wipe out the northern guys first and then focus on the south. If you start off in the south, you wipe out the guys that are in the south and then you go up north. Oda and some of these other guys right here that start off in the middle, you can go either way. But like I said, there's my declaration on Tsutsui. Now that I defeated Tsutsui, I'm gonna go ahead and full annex them. You're doing that with whichever nation you're fighting. Of course, don't even think about fighting Ashikaga at this point in the game. We're only gonna do that, hopefully, after we wipe out everyone else. When you get a little bit of cash, you are gonna wanna start building up galleys if you can. Here's another event based on this incident right here, New Confucianism. This first option here will lead towards an open outcome and give us advisor discounts for 10 years, and the second option right here will lead towards an isolationist outcome, and it gives us 10 legitimacy. After you get Tech 4 in every category, you're going to want to use mill points to tech up in mill still. Even though you will have not embraced institutions, you'll want to use dip points to lower war exhaustion, and you're going to want to use admin points to core and full state everything. So don't focus on these two, only focus on mill after you get to Tech 4 in every category. Whenever you get events like this where either Ashikaga gains opinion of you or you gain some bonuses, always go with the opinion. We do want Ashikaga to love us at all times, since we don't want to get Sudoku'd or stuff like that. We want to remain friendly with them, hope that they don't declare on us until the end of the game, well, the end of the early game, where we're the only daimyo left. And by the way, right now I'm not fighting anyone, I'm just helping out Yamana. Now that a little bit of time has passed, I'll be moving on with my wars. This is my current weakest neighbor, Shiba, right here. As you can see, I'm only left with Tokugawa, Shiba, Hosokawa, and Uesugi, along with Ashikaga, so these are the easiest guys to fight. That's why I'm fighting them. Their ally won't even help them. You're doing pretty much the same, fighting the weakest nation that you border and that you have the Sengoku CB on. Now that I've defeated Shiba, I will be full annexing them, even though they have provinces up here that are disconnected. You can pretty much always walk through any other daimyos over here. And of course, I'm going to take all of their money. But when you expand by a couple of states, and I did full state these two right now, even though I haven't full cored them, you will be able to take the mission Expand the Koka, which gives us some prestige and legitimacy for 20 years. Once you gain 40 army tradition, which will be super easy because you'll be fighting rebels and other armies as well, you'll be able to take the mission the Bushido Code, which gives us plus 1.5% discipline for 20 years. Once you expand a little bit and have more than 5 or 6 provinces, let's say, you can go ahead and fire the mill advisor if you want to, and go ahead and hire an admin advisor instead, because you will be using up quite a bit of admin points for coring and full coring and stating and stuff like that. For your tier 2 government reform, you could either go strengthen noble privileges or compromise with the nobility. Sure, we do gain manpower from our national ideas, but that's way later down the line, and you might not even stick with Oda ideas if you're not going for a militarily focused campaign. So because the Bushi or the nobility aren't that influential anyway, you can definitely go strengthen noble privileges, even though of course, as we all know, it's not that strong right now. But I am gonna go with it in my game. We're leaning fully into the militarily focused campaign here. If you're just chilling a little bit and you have some spare Diplo points, which you most likely will, don't tech up just yet. You can go ahead and activate the Encourage Development State Edict right here in your capital state of Western Chibu, if you're playing with Oda, of course. If not, look for a Farmlands or level 2 Center of Trade province to spawn the Renaissance in, and that's one of these 4 provinces right here. The best province to spawn the Renaissance in is this one right here, since it produces Chinaware, it's Farmlands, and you can bump it up to a level 2 Center of Trade. But if you haven't conquered it yet, then definitely go for it in your capital. Of course, when you do lower autonomy, just like me, be careful of declaring wars at that point, because you will gain some unrest and rebels will start popping up. So you don't want to fight these guys at the same time you're fighting wars. Of course, you don't have to focus on lowering autonomy and full stating everything either. There's another way to do this, pretty much conquer all of Japan and then deal with all of these things and the rebels. But for a regular campaign, this is pretty much how you would do it. As you can see, I full stated everything that I've conquered so far. Make sure to reduce inflation as well, since you will be taking on quite a bit of loans at the start. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this where you're sort of alliance locked between a couple of big nations, you're just gonna have to wait around for some of them to not join, which will happen quite often. In my case right here, as we can see, if I want to fight Tokugawa, Hosokawa won't join, so that's perfect. I'm just gonna declare on Uesugi right here, co-belligerent Tokugawa, since once again Hosokawa won't join, and go ahead and wipe out both of these nations. If you can't full annex a larger nation like this, as we can see, these guys are 77% war score, but if they were larger than this, you sort of want to go through them so you can start bordering other nations and not just conquer everything next to you. So if I couldn't full annex these guys, I'd probably take something like this so I can connect my land over here. But either way, no big deal. I'm gonna declare on Uesugi and go belligerent Tokugawa. I'm also a Miltech ahead of Uesugi at this point, which is great. When you make your navy large enough, you will want to start popping them out so you can blockade coastal fort. When you get events like these, don't choose this first option right here, even though you get nice bonuses, because also all daimyos will be displeased. Sure, if there are only like 5 or 6 of them left, you can go with this, but if there are lots of them left, go with the second option right here. Now I'll go ahead and full annex Tokugawa. There we go. And there we go, I'll full annex Uesugi as well. This is quite a lot of provinces, and you will encounter a daimyo that you'll fight just as big as this, and as we can see, it says a coalition will form, and there's about 5 nations over here. But the thing is, lots of these nations are fighting each other, so that means they can't all declare on us even if a coalition as big as this forms. That means even if all 5 of these guys join, if a coalition declares, since you have no allies or something like that, you'll probably only end up fighting 1 or 2 of them, and you can very easily defeat them. So don't worry about coalitions at all. And there we go. There's my war with Uesugi done. After you conquer about half of Japan, you will have no more problems with money. And by the way, just a quick mention for the missions, we're not strictly focusing on completing any of the top ones right now. We'll basically go ahead and complete them as we play along. About 20 years into the game, there's only about 7 daimyos left. Of course, more experienced players could have conquered all of this by now, and if you're going for a more aggressive playstyle, you definitely could have as well. Either way, I'm waiting to core some of these other provinces up before I wipe out Ando and Satake up here in the north before we go and focus down in the south. There are only these guys left down here pretty much, so it'll be super easy. You'll be doing the same with whichever nation you're playing. We're still fighting the weakest possible neighbor. Like I said at the start, don't build up too much samurai regiments for now at the start of the game. As we can see, I have 2 of them. The thing is, they're super expensive to reinforce, so we're kind of poor for samurai now. We'll get those up later. Now that I'm done chilling, I'll go ahead and declare on Satake. As we can see, they're in a coalition against me, but they're the only nation that's in a coalition against me, so no reason not to declare. And by developing my capital super slowly, basically whenever I have a spare points, I've finally spawned the Renaissance. Unlike other places where we spawn the Renaissance, we're not really focusing on this all of the time. Do it whenever you have the points pretty much. After that, you can go ahead and activate the advancement effort. Now that I've defeated Satake, I'm gonna go ahead and full annex them. Once again, it says a coalition will form, but it won't really form. And now that that's done, I'll immediately go ahead and declare an Ando. They're located up here, pretty much the final daimyo up here that we have to fight. Ainu isn't a daimyo, so after I've taken care of the north, I'll go ahead and push down south into my biggest rival right now, the nation of Hosokawa. But for now, it's Ando. And now that Ando is done, I'll go ahead and full annex them as well. Once again, it says a coalition will form, but it's only Hosokawa, so it's really no big deal. And there we go, I've wrapped up every nation up in the north. For you, it may have been easier to go down south, if you of course started with Oda just like me, and then you have the north left, or you could have expanded equally in both areas. Keep lowering autonomy from time to time. This does mean that you'll fight rebels, but it's very necessary, trust me. And also, when you pay off the old burger loans, keep taking new burger loans so you can pay off the high interest loans with the low interest loans. This helps you make more money. Now that I'm done dealing with some rebels, I'll go ahead and declare on Hosokawa, and most likely you in your game, just like me, will have one big rival left somewhere on this island. In my game it's Hosokawa, in your game it could be anyone else, but this is pretty much your final boss battle when you're pretty much wrapped up all the daimyos, because fighting Ashikaga, well, it's actually super easy. So I'm gonna declare on Sengoku, on Hosokawa. I did make some claims on them just so they're cheaper to core. By this point, your navy shouldn't be really that big, maybe about 10 to 20 ships, but it should be the strongest out of any nation over in Japan. Now that I've defeated Hosokawa enough, because their province war score cost is over 100, which means I can't full annex them, either way I am gonna go ahead and peace out for all of these provinces right here, and I'll take the rest when my truce with them is up. No money this time because I want the truce to be as short as possible. And there we go. Ideally, something like this wouldn't happen in your campaign because you really don't want to fight a nation twice, because you'll have to wait for the truce, and that of course delays your formation of Japan, which of course delays your fighting of Ashikaga. So if you end up fighting a nation twice like me over here, it's not that ideal, but it could happen in your game as well. Either way, no big deal. You'll just be fighting Ashikaga a little bit later. You can of course do other things in the meantime too, like improving your nation and building it up. Either way, now it's just 4 daimyos left, me and Hosokawa, which I of course have to wait for my truce with them to expire, and then we have Amago right here, which I can fight very soon, along with So here as well, which I can also fight soon. Right now, since I can't embrace the Renaissance, I am gonna go ahead and take out a couple of regular loans and go ahead and embrace it because I do need to tech up. And there we go, there's Diplotech 5 and Miltech 6. Once most of the daimyos have been wiped out, you can once again tell this guy over in Nippon to maximize profit instead of establish communities. When you embrace the Renaissance and start teching up, you will be behind in admin tech. Don't worry, that's not a big deal. That's just from all the coring and stating and full stating that we've been doing. Now that I've cored everything up that I took from Hosokawa, I'll be declaring a quick war versus Amago. They don't have any allies, so let's go ahead and wrap them up as well. By this point, 1480, some of you will have definitely already conquered everything. And of course, I'll tell you what to do once I do it as well. There we go, Amago is done. I'll be full annexing them too. So right here is technically the only nation that you can't declare a Sengoku on. So once you get some of these provinces right here where you sea tile border them, go ahead and start spying on them and make a regular claim. And for your tier 3 government reform, I recommend going with expanded royal court or centralized monarchical bureaucracy. Both of these are pretty good for Japan, no matter if you're going expansionist, colonialist, or isolationist. In my game right here, I'm gonna go with centralized monarchical bureaucracy. Once you make a regular claim on the province of Tsushima, you can definitely go ahead and declare on So. They're probably one of the last daimyos you'll end up fighting. Now I've defeated So, of course I'll be full annexing them, you'll be doing the same. It's time for me to get back home, deal with these rebels, lower autonomy, build some buildings, focus on improving the economy until I can go ahead and fight Hosokawa and wait for my truce with them to expire. You'll be doing the same if you're waiting for a truce. If not, it's time to go ahead and declare on Ashikaga with the war for the Emperor CB. While you're building up your nation, you will also want to heavily focus on building up your navy, specifically galleys and heavies too later on. Right now, we don't need any light ships, so we can go ahead and get rid of them if you have any, but definitely go ahead and build up a bunch of galleys. Go way over force limit if you need to. This is in preparation for later, for fighting Korea, maybe some of the Manchurian tribes, and maybe even Ming. For your first stage ability, you can go with Justified Wars or Adaptive Combat Terrain, depending on which nation you're playing. Once you hit Admin Tech 5, and it will be pretty late, it will be time for your first idea group, and of course, if you're planning on going for a colonial Japan game, you're gonna open up with Exploration Expansion. That's pretty much as simple as that. However, if you're going for an isolationist playing tall campaign or a blobbing in East Asia campaign, those idea groups will be pretty much the same ones that you pick based on the modifiers. For your first idea group, I do recommend going for a mill idea group to buff up your army even more, especially if you're playing as Oda and planning on staying with Oda ideas instead of Japan ideas, because Oda ideas are super great for conquest, whereas Japanese ideas, you'll go for them, well, if you're playing colonial. Either way, for my game right here, and for yours too, if you're going Paul or expansionist, I recommend quality ideas. Quality ideas will buff up our army even more, giving us plus 30% combat ability, while we're a daimyo, of course, later on where we're not a daimyo, we'll lose 10%, so we definitely want to get it back, and this will buff up our cavalry and artillery as well, give us even more discipline, and it'll buff up our boats too, because we will be utilizing them quite heavily. So I do think this is one of the best openers for a non-colonial Japan game, quality ideas. Right now, I'm focusing on building some buildings. If by this point in the game you still haven't fought Ashikaga just like me, in your game, unlike mine, Ashikaga may have annexed some other daimyos, which does happen sometimes if you play long enough and don't conquer enough, and Ashikaga may be a little bit bigger in your game than they are in mine. I've seen Ashikaga own half of Japan by the time I've gotten to fight them, so it really depends on what the AI wants to do in your campaign. Either way, it's no big deal, it'll still be super easy. When you are able to select your naval doctrine, you might be tempted to go with Atake Bune right here, which gives you plus 5% morale of navies and plus 5% heavy ship combat ability, which is pretty strong, I do have to admit. But for now, in the early portion of the game, while we're still focusing on galleys, which will help us defeat Korea and Ming and some of the Jurchen guys in the inland seas right here, I do recommend going for galley combat ability more. If you're going for a colonial gameplay where you have to fight some faraway nations, definitely go with this one though. Now that my truce with Hosokawa is finally up, I'll go ahead and declare on the final daimyo and full annex them. As you're fighting your final daimyo, make sure to stop improving relations with Ashikaga and go ahead and send them a scornful insult. And now that I've defeated Hosokawa, I'll go ahead and full annex them, and with that, you will also have annexed your final daimyo. Once you go ahead and core this up, you can go ahead and fight Ashikaga. You will be losing quite a bit of stability here, especially if you're royal married still and if you have good relations, but of course it is necessary and it is something that we do have to do. While you're fighting or getting ready to fight Ashikaga, you should go ahead and start spying on Ainu. And once you're ready, simply go ahead and declare on Ashikaga with the war for the Emperor CB. And that's your final war over in Japan, dealing with the whole shogunate mechanic. And now that I've defeated Ashikaga in this super quick and simple war, and you'll be doing the same, you are gonna go ahead and full annex them and take all of their money. And with that, we gain the Fall of Kyoto event, where we're no longer a daimyo. Once the war with Ashikaga is finished, you will notice that you are now a shogunate, which gives us a +1 diplomat, -25% envoy travel time, +5 max absolutism, and +10 samurai force limit, which is good because now we'll be rich enough to be able to utilize the samurai, and of course you will be able to take the mission Political Supremacy for 50 prestige and permaclaims on South and Eastern Korea, as we can see right here. Then you'll also be able to take the mission Unite Japan, and you'll gain a permaclaim on Okinawa, which is pretty much the area that Ryukyu owns. And of course, after you take out Ashikaga, you will also be able to form the nation of Japan just like that. And if you're going for a colonial playthrough, I do recommend taking the new traditions and ambitions and getting the Japanese ideas. Or you could also take the Japanese traditions and ambitions if you're planning on playing tall and isolationist. However, if you're planning on expanding a whole lot and you're simply in love with Oda's militarily focused national ideas, then you should select this option. No, we can't abandon our roots. For my game right here, I'm gonna stick with this, but you can go with whichever one you want based on what your goals are in that campaign. Of course, you could focus on completing the daimyo missions as well before you form Japan. However, I just did this right here in order to show off the Japanese mission tree. This top mission right here sort of focuses on improving your nation and developing it and stuff like that, whereas this bottom branch right here focuses on expansion and colonization, and you'll also gain an additional branch if you somehow decide to go for the Mandate of Heaven. Another cool option right here is that you can go ahead and switch your color back to Oda, even though that doesn't really work most of the time. Either way, now you can simply go ahead and choose one of these generic regular tier 1 government reforms. Eastern plutocracy is pretty good, basically for maximizing trade and stuff like that. However, I do recommend going for an autocracy, or if you're planning on playing with subjects, a feudal nobility slightly more. I'm gonna go with the autocracy myself. Once you've wiped out Ashikaga, you can delete any remaining forts over in Japan because they really don't serve any purpose. Keep in mind that you do still have the samurai even though you don't have one of those unique government reforms for Japan. And you also have unique government reforms later down the line as well, which I will get to. Once you've gone ahead and formed Japan and defeated Ashikaga, there really is no reason to wait around. You can simply go ahead and declare an Ainu. And once you go ahead and defeat Ainu, generally you will be full annexing them unless they've expanded a whole lot, which does happen sometimes even though it's rare. But of course you will want to get all of these provinces right here, which are in the region of Japan, and then if you plan on expanding further, such as in Manchuria, you can also take this province right here that they start with, and from this province you can go ahead and push on into the hordes. For my game right here, since I'm planning on expanding in these 3 regions only, so going for a half tall, half militarily focused campaign, and maybe I'll be fighting Ming later on, we'll see, I will go ahead and take that so I can push into Nivek, along with all of their money. Once you do that, core it up and convert it to Shinto. And when fighting Ainu, Korea, and some of the tribes right here, there are really good missions for fighting them and stuff like that. So that's why, like I said, you might want to hold off on forming Japan unless you're super excited for their missions or going colonial. But like I said, I formed it just to showcase the missions. Either way, speaking of missions, we do want to work on completing this one, which we need to have paid off all of our loans for. But before we take this mission, make sure to develop this province right here, Ichigo, up to 8 production, because if we do that, gold will spawn right there and it'll be super beneficial for us. So activate encourage development right here in this province pretty much whenever you get it or whenever you want to, and go ahead and dev it up to 8 production. After you wipe out Ainu right here, depending on what the situation with Ming is, your next expansion opportunities, if you even want to expand any more than this, will be Korea or some of the Jurchen tribes right here. Of course, these guys up here, they aren't Ming tributaries, so you can definitely go ahead and fight them easily. Or maybe if Ming has blown up, you can go ahead and fight Korea if Ming won't protect them. However, if Ming is intact, just like this, which does happen in most games in these latest patches, well, you are going to want to buff up your navy significantly, build tons of galleys and a couple of heavies as well. There is a great mission for heavy ships still in the daimyo missions, and you will want to go ahead and blockade Ming until they get bored of the war, and then you can simply white piece them and move on into Korea. Be careful though, Korea is also deceptively tough to fight. They will have a pretty large army and they have a lot of forts since they have like 2 capitals and stuff like that, and their provinces will be really developed due to all of the dev bonuses that they get. So even if you're fighting just Korea, don't underestimate them. They will be your toughest rival so far. If you can't fight Korea, however, definitely go ahead and start spying on some of the hordes up here. If you ever end up getting this event and this general right here, which is insanely powerful, this would be a really good time to go ahead and fight Korea. And whenever you build up about 5 heavies and about 30 galleys, of course more is always better, and Ming also has low mandate, I do recommend declaring on Korea at that point. Of course, ideally you'd also have this general. Now, the war with Korea right here is going to be very weird and non-traditional if you end up fighting Ming 2, because you will want to end up fighting Korea's boats and defeating their navy, since it will be pretty large as well. And if you're fighting Ming 2, you will want to not fight Ming's navy, so Ming can go ahead and actually land in Japan, and you can just wipe their army without them having anywhere to go. Of course, if they're low mandate. However, if Ming and Korea have gotten the event where Korea is no longer a tributary, then that's excellent, and you can just go ahead and fight them without Ming. Now, ideally, I did want to declare on Korea right here and also fight Ming, but they've just ended their tributary status, and unfortunately, I didn't catch that. But like I said, if you end up fighting both of these guys, fight Korea's navy and not Ming's navy, let Ming land, beat them up, go ahead and blockade them in Beijing, and after a couple of years, you will be able to white peace them. And after that, you'll go ahead and navally invade Korea. So what I'm going to show you right now is pretty much after you've white peaced Ming. But don't worry, if your navy is about this big, and if they're low mandate, you will be able to white peace them very soon. You've already seen tons of videos on how Ming is easy to beat up, so no need to be worried about that. So whenever you're ready, simply go ahead and declare on Korea for the conquest of whatever. And there we go. Be careful of Korea's miltech, they do tech up pretty quickly, so you want to make sure that they're not a miltech over you. When you hit Advent Act 7, it will be time for your second idea group, and of course if you're going colonial, it's exploration expansion, but if you're going for a non-colonial gameplay, after you went quality, you should go with economic ideas. This will help buff up our nation even more in an economic sense, build buildings, and it'll help with the gold as well. The goods produced along with the goods produced we already get is super strong as well, and the merchant will come in handy too. So economic ideas mesh really well with Oda ideas. So after quality, definitely go economic. Once you siege down Korea's capital, you will get this event right here where you can bring some nice modifiers over to your province of Kyoto, which should be your capital. It gives you splendor, religious harmonization speed if you ever decide on going Confucian, and institution growth as well. These modifiers aren't really that powerful, so you can just burn it down and gain some mill points, which is what I would do in my game. Once you go ahead and defeat Korea, I recommend focusing on the southern provinces right here that you have claims on. You would get further claims on Korea from your daimyo missions, but I'm not sure if you do from the Japanese missions, so either way, go ahead and focus on the southern provinces right here. Take as much as you can. You won't be able to take a whole lot, especially depending on how much Korea has dev. As we can see in my game, I can't take all of this right here, and it is quite a lot of aggressive expansion and quite a lot of admin points as well. So I'll just do this right here, take as much as I can, and even though it's not all of the claims, we'll take care of the rest of them later. And that's my war with Korea done. For your tier 4 government reform, I recommend interweaving of shrine and state. Now that I've cored up almost everything from Korea, and you'll be doing pretty much the same if you're focusing on expanding in this region, fight over here a little bit, then up here, then if Ming is weak enough, you can also go ahead and hit them, but try to shift your conquest opportunities just a little bit between Korea and Ming, and then these Jurchen guys up here. In my game, I'm going to be declaring on Nivik, since our overlord Orochoni's ally Mongolia won't join. And now that I defeated Nivik and Orochoni and pieced out Korchin, I'm going to go ahead and take as much as I can. If you're focusing on expanding, you're also going to be taking as much as you can, because you're fighting a different culture group to Korea, or maybe you fought these guys first and then Korea, it doesn't matter. Coalitions aren't a problem either when fighting any of these guys right here, so no need to worry about that. So I'm just going to do something like this in my game. And there we go. And when you focus on paying off all of your loans and developing this province over here up to 8 production, you can go ahead and take this mission right here, which makes this province produce gold. After that, you'll bump it up a couple of more times up to 10 production. There we go. I think I can do it right now. Perfect. Now we have a very important additional source of income. If you expand a little bit in this trade node right here, you can tell the guy that's collecting in Beijing to transfer from here to Nippon. Of course, you do want to promote Korean culture. When your average autonomy is lower than 5%, you'll be able to take this mission right here where this event happens. We gain a dev discount and global prosperity growth for about 35 years. And by around the time the Age of Reformation comes around, your game should look a little something like this. Basically, we start off as Oda or any other Japanese daimyo except for So and except for the nations of Ainu and Ryukyu and Ashikaga, which of course aren't daimyos, and by this point in the game you should have definitely conquered the entire region of Japan, perhaps with the exception of Ryukyu. Of course, up until the point that you conquer the entire region of Japan, everything is pretty much the same, but after that you could have decided where you want to take your game, whether you went colonial Japan and took Japanese national ideas, exploration expansion and started colonizing down here in Southeast Asia, or even gone to the New World in North America and South America, or if you chose to be isolationist, maybe play with the entirety of the region of Japan only, maybe with the region of Korea as well, or maybe try to conquer the entire subcontinent of the Far East, or maybe you want to blob out even further than this. But by this point in the game, even with pretty slow gameplay, you should definitely own all of this, and if you're expanding, you should have pushed into Korea and into the hordes, and of course more experienced players by now would own pretty much this entire region right here, and they would have expanded into China. After this point, if you are expanding, you're going to continue to expand in the same directions we've already been expanding in so far, pretty much this region right here, wrap up the smaller nations that are left, and then once you find Ming at low mandate, you're going to buff up your army, buff up your navy, and go ahead and fight them, because when they're at low mandate, it'll be super easy to fight them. If you're colonizing, it's pretty much a standard colonization game. You do have some colonialism missions down here, at least one right here. You do have a colonialism mission right here, which gives you some nice bonuses for 20 years and stuff like that, so you're definitely going to want to focus on this down here. Some of these uncolonized provinces, maybe fighting the nations over in the East Indies, maybe we want to go for this, maybe we're going to want to go for China or the New World. Of course, whichever daimyo we started off with, we did start off pretty poor and pretty weak, but by this point in the game, as we can see, I'm making about 40 ducats a month. Only 7 of it is from gold, the rest of it is from taxation and trade. Production is pretty weak right now, but of course you will go ahead and buff that up later on in the game. And like I said earlier, after you conquer about half of Japan, money should start coming in slowly, and at that point is when you should have started focusing on building up your nation economically as well. These are the marketplaces that I've built so far. Of course, you should have built all of the same ones, as we can see in the center of trade provinces, and I have upgraded some centers of trade, specifically the ones in Japan. You should have done the same. You should have built a couple of churches, as we can see right here, a couple of production buildings, and a couple of army buildings here and there as well. That will help you out in your game massively. And of course, later on, you will go on to build manufactories as well, and definitely make sure to spawn the gold too. Like I mentioned earlier, in an ideal campaign, you would not go ahead and form Japan immediately, because the daimyo missions get removed completely. So you will want to look to complete as many daimyo missions as you can before going on to form the nation of Japan. Of course, if you don't care about all of that stuff and expanding over here, then you can definitely go with forming Japan and taking their ideas and colonizing immediately. But of course, as you notice, for pretty much whichever nation over in Japan, not just Oda, the start is pretty much the same for all of them. You go ahead and fight your weakest neighbors with very little downtime, not focusing on colonizing, focusing on getting some money, paying off loans, getting bigger loans, paying off the other smaller loans. If you're playing fast, you will run into some money trouble early on in the campaign. If you're going slowly, other nations might grow too big. Ashikaga might start annexing their subjects, so you definitely need to strike a balance right there. And for conquering Japan, it's pretty much the same, fighting the weakest neighbor or the easiest neighbor to fight until you get to fighting Ashikaga, and after that you should have annexed Ashikaga, and after wrapping all of these guys up, you should have focused on Ainu, and after Ainu, these are the 2 regions you should have focused on expanding in. I already explained the way to fight Korea. When Ming is their overlord, you basically declare on Korea, fight their boats, not fight Ming's boats. Let Ming land some armies, beat them up while they're at low mandate. After that, go ahead and beat up Ming's boats as well after they ferried some armies over, and then you should blockade Ming over in Beijing right here. After that, you could have white peaced them and taken care of Korea easily. Whereas for these hordes up here that are not Ming tributaries, it's very straightforward. It's just a regular war, and pretty much those are the most difficult wars in the early game that you'll have to fight. Everything over in Japan is pretty easy. The only difficult thing could be fighting Ming with Korea, and then this right here is pretty straightforward. Of course, if you're focusing on expanding, definitely go through these missions right here as well. This bottom branch right here focuses on conquest, and it does give you some claims over in Ming. As you can see, we do need to conquer southern China over here, and we do gain some nice modifiers right here. Later on, you will gain some Christianity related events. You can go Christian if you want to, but I do recommend staying Shinto slightly more. I do think it's a slightly more fun way to play Japan, whether it's a colonial or expansion or isolationist game. Of course, I didn't mention at the start that there are quite a lot of great projects over here that you can take advantage of over in this greater region right here. Of course, we do have these palaces right here, which at tier 3 give us some prestige from land battles, along with a 100% discount for war taxes and 10% general discount. This is pretty good, but don't focus on building it up immediately. Then, of course, we have Mount Fuji as well, which gives us some nice modifiers in the province and the area, but globally for plus 0.5 yearly prestige, that's not that strong either. Then, of course, we have the Imperial City of Kyoto, which you should definitely focus on upgrading. This one is pretty strong, especially for the estates, max absolutism, and liberty desiring subjects. And of course, we do have the Himeji Castle right here, which globally gives us some spy stuff and yearly prestige. And then over in Korea, we have this one right here for some advisor discounts globally and development discounts in the state and area. This one is generally the best one. one, even though you won't have it immediately. But once you start making money, definitely focus on upgrading this one and promoting Korean culture. Although I'm not really sure if you can use this one. So definitely focus on upgrading the ones over in Japan. This is what we took for our first two idea groups, quality and economic ideas. And no matter if you're expanding or staying isolationist, I do think for your third idea group, you should pick up another military idea group, such as offensive ideas. These mesh once again really well with Oda or any other militarily focused national ideas. After taking offensive, then you should go with another money-making idea group such as trade, because if you're expanding a whole lot over in this region right here, there are a lot of trade nodes. You will want to get merchants in pretty much all of this, and you will want to route pretty much all of the trade from this region that you conquer over here over to Beijing. However, if you're focusing on colonizing down here and taking provinces over here, then you should eventually move your main trade node over to Malacca, or at least put one merchant to collect in Malacca and tell all of these other guys from over here to transfer to it. Either way, whether you're going colonial down here or expanding, you do want to pick up trade at some point. If you're going with this route, definitely pick up trade for your fourth one. So quality, economic, offensive, trade, and then after that, it's pretty much up to you. If you went colonial and took exploration and expansion, after that, once again, you should focus on some army and economy focused national ideas. So even after exploration and expansion, you could definitely go with quality and economic or quality and trade. This is what we took for our first 4 government reforms for tier 5. We do have 2 unique ones. This one right here, which gives us a 10% infantry discount and plus 50% army tradition from battles, which is super strong, especially if you pick up defensive as well. And then we have the early Bushido code right here, which gives us -1 yearly army tradition decay and plus 10% samurai force limit. Of course, you do need to focus on samurai from this point in the game. When you're making a ton of money, you can definitely sustain that plus 50% reinforced cost. So whenever you conquer all of Japan and start making money, definitely put in as many samurai regiments in your army as you can, because they are really strong. For tier 6, I recommend going with Royal Decree. For tier 7, I recommend meritocratic recruitment. For tier 8, we also have a unique one, the Gokaido reform right here, which gives us plus 20% goods produced in the region of Japan, along with plus 20% local trade power and -5 local dev cost, along with an additional merchant. So this one is super strong. Of course, you do need to complete a certain mission to unlock it, but if not, you can definitely go with Empower the Burghers. For tier 9, I recommend this one, or if you're blobbing out a whole lot, then definitely go with this one. And for tier 10 and tier 11, all of them are really good. Take whichever one you want at that point in the game. You won't make a mistake with either one of them. And like I said, around the time the Age of Reformation comes around, your game should look a little something like this. Let me know in the comments below what's the next nation that I should do a guide on. If you want to watch me do stuff like this live, you can follow me on twitch.tv/RedHawkLive. And if you want to catch up on stuff from over there, you can subscribe to the second channel. Link is in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to leave a like. It really helps out a lot. And if you like the content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of them. And you can become a member today and join the Discord. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with another EU4 video.